Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, this is At the Helm Sports. I'm your host, Derek Helm. Thank you for joining me for episode 181. Please be sure to follow and subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave those 5-star reviews if you're watching on YouTube. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. This week, we're going to be diving into the Truist Championship. Got another elevated event right before a major. We got the PGA Championship coming up next week, so it's been a rough couple weeks with the Zurich and the CJ Cup last week, but we got some big boy golf coming. So we got the elevated event, obviously, this week, and then the second major of the year next week. So excited to dive into this one. Obviously, this is a course that nobody really knows anything about. So we're going to dive heavily into that, go through the different strategies. Quickly, we could recap last week with the CJ Cup Byron Nelson. On this podcast, I basically made a case against Scottie Scheffler, saying that in a birdie fest, it can bring some random guys to the top of the leaderboard, which it did. And that maybe it kind of caps Scottie's upside. Clearly, that was not the case because the guy tied the greatest tournament score of all time. So as it got to Wednesday, I actually did kind of see that as I was building lineups. I only played 10 lineups. Probably should have played a little bit more considering the field strength and just the variance of the field. But I've been trying to condense my player pool a little bit lately. Hasn't really been working out. So I think I'm going to go back to the way I've been doing it for a while. Was trying it out. It's trial and error. But I do think that playing Scottie, as I said, if you were going to play him, I think going 100% or 80% was the way to go, just because you needed so many variations of so many other guys to try and get there. But I ended up only playing about 40% of Scottie, and wasn't enough because, he was incredible. I will say, I do think that more golfers need to try and do this, is when you are looking for a win, go to a weaker field event. A lot of times guys just, I don't know if it's pride or just they don't want to play in certain tournaments. And, if you're one of the better golfers on tour and you haven't won in a long time, just go pick up a win at some shitbag tournament somewhere. And I wouldn't say that's necessarily what Scottie was doing. I know obviously he has the Texas ties. I know that the Byron Nelson was one of his first tournaments on tour, so that's the main reason why he's here, and it meant a lot to him. But he looked superhuman. Basically birdied half the holes of the entire week. It was absolutely insane to see what he was doing. And first win of the year, maybe this opens the floodgates for him. It's kind of scary to think about there, because if Scottie's putting and striking the ball as well as he was, everybody's in a lot of trouble. But that's something we have to worry about for next week for the PGA Championship, which we will dive into next week, because Scottie's not in the field this week. We have the Truist Championship, and then it is an elevated event here, so not one of the player-hosted ones, so there is no cut, 72 golfers in the field. We head to Flourtown, Pennsylvania, right outside of Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Cricket Club. It is played at the Wissahickon course, which was designed by A.W. Tillinghast. Now, obviously, this is formerly the Wells Fargo. It was played at Quail Hollow and will be again next year, but Quail Hollow is hosting the PGA Championship next week, so that's why we're playing a new course this week. It's going to be interesting to see. I've heard varying opinions already on how the course is going to play, what type of golfers we should look for. So it's going to be interesting as the week goes on to see where guys are really going as far as who they're targeting in betting in DFS. But then it's also going to be interesting once the tournament starts to see what skill sets are going to play well here, and what strategy guys are going to implement on this course, because this is a course that no one's really seen before. As I said, A.W. Tillinghast designed it in 1922. It was renovated in 2013 and 2014 by Kevin Foster. During the renovation, they redid the greens, the tees, fairways, bunkers, installed a new irrigation system, cut down a ton of trees, hundreds of trees, and basically returned it to its original design. So The course did host a Champions Tour event in 2016. Bernhard Langer won at 1 over par, so it played pretty difficult. Now, obviously, that's the senior tour a decade ago, so advancements in technology and equipment and obviously much better caliber of golfer this time. But the fact that in a professional setting it did play that difficult is probably something to note. Obviously, I don't think that the winning score is going to be over par this week, but we do have a 7,112 yard par 70 with bent grass greens. There's some rerouting of the course compared to what the members generally play. Now, I keep hearing that the tournament will start on 8 and finish on 7, but on the PGA's website, there are a couple things that look like they may have swapped a couple holes, but regardless, it's definitely starting at 8. They'll go to 9 and play through. And then on the back 9, which is originally the front 9 for the members, it looks like based off of what the PGA Tour has, hole and 4 and 7 on the traditional setup are going to be swapped and played as the 15th and 18th hole. So just something to keep in mind there. Now, as I said, have heard varying different reports on that. So I'm just going by what the PGA has listed right now. But regardless, they definitely will be starting on hole number 8. There are 12 par 4s on the course, 4 par 3s, and 2 par 5s. And we're looking at 2 par 4s, 350 to 400 yards, 7 par 4s from 400 to 450, 2 from 450 to 500, and then the closing 18th hole is going to play slightly over 500 yards. There's 2 short par 3s. The third hole plays at 172 yards. 14th hole is only 122, so that's going to be an interesting one. Guys basically hitting wedge into that one. And then both the other par threes are 240 and 215 yards. So big discrepancy in yardage between the 4 of those holes. Obviously, the par fives are going to play as the easiest hole on the course. Definitely going to want to take advantage of those considering there's only 2 of them. The 5th hole looks like it's going to play as 546 yards, and then the 15th hole is 553. The 15th hole is that 7th hole I was talking about for members on the traditional setup, and it's home of the Great Hazard. So this is an interesting hole. You're going to see it come tournament time. Basically 13 bunkers and some long fescue just put dead center in the middle of the fairway. So going to be interesting to see how guys go about avoiding that one. 13 bunkers, it's pretty crazy. Now, speaking of bunkers, there are a ton of them. Basically, this is the most on any course that we're going to see all year long. 118 bunkers totaling 104,000 square feet. So there is sand everywhere on this course, and guys are going to have to do their best to try and stay out of it. Now, from the tee box, basically this place looks like it is wide open, but as I said, with so many bunkers, can get a little bit claustrophobic as far as strategy goes. A lot of these fairways also slope, so guys are going to have to be very strategic off the tee. I do think that bombers have a little bit of an advantage just from the fact that they might be able to take some of these bunkers out of play. And then also the further down the fairway you get, a little bit wider the fairway gets. Now, the rough, they're saying they're going to grow it out pretty good. I do think that the membership wants this place to play as difficult as possible. A little bit of rain during the week, so it's going to be interesting to see how firm and fast they can actually get it. But I don't think that missing fairways is going to be the end of the world here, but probably will have an advantage from hitting in the fairway. But if you are in the rough, just with the yardage of a lot of these holes, guys are going to be hitting wedge, 8 iron maybe out of it. So it's a little bit different from a course where you're missing fairways, you're hitting out a deep rough, and you're hitting a 200-yard approach shot compared to 140 yards. So just keep that in mind this week. That I do think the Bombers have the advantage as far as I said of maybe taking bunkers out of play and you know wider fairways, but I don't think they have as much of an advantage as they would on a longer course because so many guys, even if they are shorter hitters, are still going to be hitting short irons and wedges into these greens. So I do think that it mitigates the Bombers' advantage a little bit, but like I said, there's going to be a lot of skill sets that can play here, and it's going to be interesting to see the strategy that everybody employs And we'll go through that as we go through the field here of, how some of these guys can potentially attack this course. But on second shots, it's going to be important to set up your second shot because, as I said, you could have some uneven lies on these sloping fairways. And then a lot of these greens are elevated, they have runoffs, and they are surrounded by deep bunkers. So you do want to be in the right spot to get the right angle to your approach shot because based on pin placement, it's going to be pretty interesting. These greens are pretty undulating. Now, not to the point that we see it like Augusta where there's different tiers and just huge undulations and breaks. These greens are very undulating, but it's very tricky and kind of sneaky. They don't look like they break as much as they do, but they're probably going to play fast on these bent grass greens, and the guys are going to be having to get used to some of these breaks that they potentially might not even see. So it's going to be basically an all around test for these guys of how they're going to have to go about it. Now, I do think that living in the fairway is going to be helpful here, whether you're a shorter or longer hitter. I do think that approach is going to come into play more than anything. You want guys that are hitting greens in regulation. If you're missing too many greens, you're not going to be playing just around the green and scrambling. You're going to be hitting out of these bunkers. And if you hit too many of them, you're probably not going to be contending this week. So for me, what I'm looking at mostly is approach play, and then guys are going to have to hit their putts on these greens. But I'm looking at a little bit of opportunities gain. I don't think this is going to be a birdie fest where you need guys to continually set up scoring opportunities, but obviously guys that continually hit it within 15 feet of the pin, I do think that is something that definitely will translate here, and probably looking at a score around, I'd say maybe 15 under, depending on the rough and how fast they can get it. But it's hard to predict a winning score on a course that we've never seen. But based on the setup, that's kind of what we're looking at here. So I'm going to look at guys that have approach play, good drives gained, opportunities gained, and maybe a little bit of sand save scrambling. And a lot of the approach shots are probably going to be 150 yards and in. So you want guys that are good with the short irons and the wedges this week. But if we dive into the field, it's Rory up top, 12,000. Now, not really as high as what we saw Scottie, but it's definitely an elevated price tag, and obviously for good reason. He has a first, a fifth, and a first. His last couple times out. Now this is his first actual stroke play event. He did play the team event, obviously, with Lowry a couple weeks ago, but I don't know if I love Rory here. I want to see what his ownership gets to because obviously, if this is Quail Hollow, he's dominated there. And obviously, he's going to be very popular and a great play next week. But as I said, I don't know that his distance gives him as much of an advantage here as it would on other courses. But with that being said, I mean, I thought the same thing about Pebble and the Players Championship, and he came out and won both of those. So just the way he's playing this year, you can definitely make a case for it. As of right now, I don't know if I'm going to get there on Rory, but we'll have to see what his ownership comes in at because I love the guys right below him. And we'll get to my betting card. I have actually made a couple bets so far, so I guess we can get there first. I have Berger at 40 to 1 with the top six each way. I have Keegan Bradley at 40 to 1 with the top six each way. Obviously, we are in the Northeast. Keegan has won a number of tournaments in the Northeast, plays well on bent grass greens. I do think that he's playing good golf and makes a ton of sense. Obviously, Berger's been playing very well. Also, third place last time he was out. I also took a 45 to 1 on Sepp Straka. Just like where his game's at, I do think that he could play very well here. First on approach over the last 24 rounds, second in opportunities gained, 11th in good drives gained. He is great from 150 yards and in, fourth from 125 to 150, sixth from 100 to 125. So I love Sepp for this course. 45 to 1 and six places on him. And then I took Wyndham Clark at 66 to 1. I just think that's a very good price for what he can do. Now, he's been a little bit up and down this week, and we really haven't seen the ceiling from him, but a guy that has some distance off the tee, he's very good on the par four scoring. He's good from 100 to 125 yards. He's very good with his wedges, and he can get hot with the putter. So 66 to 1, I do like that quite a bit. Now, I have enough room on my card where one of these guys up top I am definitely betting. The problem is I cannot decide between Colin Morikawa, Xander Schauffele, and Justin Thomas. I think that this course is absolutely perfect for all three of them. I kind of lean a little bit more towards Morikawa and Justin Thomas. The issue with betting Justin Thomas again is he really going to go back to back? Sure, he definitely can. He actually rates out very well for what I'm looking at this course. He's seventh in par four scoring, ninth on approach, third in opportunities gained, fifth in sand saves, fourth from 100 to 125, first from 125 to 150. He's been putting very well. So I kind of do lean him. He obviously has the best number of these three also. But again, is he going to come out here and win two signature events in a row? I don't know if I can really back him there, but I'm definitely going to be playing him in DraftKings. Now, whoever I do bet here, maybe I get away from in DraftKings and just ride with the outright just because you can't play everyone up here. So that's why I think I'm skipping over Rory. Probably going to play Colin because I just basically everything I just said about JT, it's the same thing for him. Only thing is he has not been putting well. So that's kind of been holding him back a little bit, which obviously if the putter shows up any week, he is definitely going to win because with how well he's been striking the ball, the finishes he's had, the fact that he's not putting, I mean, it's pretty crazy. So definitely like Colin here. And then Xander as well. It's just fourth on approach. He's been striking the ball very well, been hitting the wedges very well. Same thing with him. It's kind of been the short game since he came back from the injury, but I do think he's rounding into form. I actually like him a lot for next week. I'm going to be monitoring what he does this week because right now I'm seeing a 20 to 1 on him for the PGA Championship. And I kind of am thinking about betting him this week and next week and just hoping he wins one of them. But I kind of like him more for next week. Quail is a place where obviously we'll get into it next week, but he's performed well also. And 20 to 1, I think, is a pretty good number here. So I'm definitely going to be playing the three of these guys, but I like Ludwig also. He's a guy that's played well on shorter courses. He's obviously put very well on fast bent grass greens. He's been incredible putting at the Masters the last 2 years. And I do think that, they're not exactly the same type of greens, but I do think they're comparable. We're going to have fast greens here. They are bent grass. So do like where he's at, obviously, with the distance and how straight he hits the ball. He plays well on courses that he's never seen before. So I like these guys quite a bit, and they're probably the reason why I'm not going to get to Rory this week. I've heard a lot of love for Cantlay up here at 9,500 and Russell Henley. Now, I get it. I do think that this is a course that suits them as well. Cantlay, similar to Morikawa, not really putting very well, actually putting terribly. So I'm going to use that as my reason not to go to him. And then I can't really make a reason to not go to Henley other than just I'd rather play these other guys around him. Now, with that being said, this looks like a great setup for Henley. So if you want to go there, I get it. But I do think I'm actually going to go to Fleetwood over him, 9,300. I love what he gets up to on par fours. You have him with a wedge in his hand a lot of times. If he does go in the sand, he's fine. We have 7 par fours from 400 to 450 yards. He's first on par fours from that range in the field. So do like him quite a bit. I would expect Spieth to get some ownership here. Obviously, after looking good the past couple times out and last week, it's very exciting to see him going into a PGA championship and playing as well as he is. I had the outright on him last week and just talked myself out of betting him for a top 10, which that kind of sucked because obviously that could have basically paid off the week. But I think I'm going to skip over Spieth and I'm going to play some Hovland. And obviously, Hovland doesn't have the stability that a Henley has or even a Spieth recently, but I do think that he has just as good, if not better, upside there. Now, the amount of sand that's around here kind of scares me a little bit, but I think if he's on top of his game and he's hitting greens and if he can get that putter going, he can absolutely contend here. And I'd expect him to be much lower owned. So I think in some of my larger field stuff, I am going to play some Hovland there. I'm not going to get there on Hideki. I do like Corey Connors quite a bit here. Similar to Henley, but you get a little bit of a discount here on the price. So I think I'm going to go to Connors. Second on the par four scoring. He's 12th on approach, 7th in good drives gained. He's been scrambling well. The short game has been much better. He's obviously good with the wedges and short irons in his hand. So I do like where he's at. I think he's a guy that has a little bit of distance. He's very accurate, so he's probably going to be in the fairway quite a bit, and he's going to be hitting greens. So if he can hit some putts, I do like it. Sepp Straka, already made the case for him. I think it's a great course for him. I can't play everybody here, so if I do go to Connors, I might just ride with the outright with Straka. Same with Berger. I do like where he's at. I probably prefer him in a DraftKings setting over Straka. I think he has a little bit more stability this year and probably a similar upside. So I'm going back and forth between those two guys. Probably going to skip over Shane Lowry. Sungjae Im has some of my interest. I want to see what the field is going to do with him. Obviously had a great week last week and has some okay finishes recently. Missed the cut obviously in Korea, but I mean that's just such a weird event. It doesn't matter much, but last week started off very well, ended up 33rd place, but 11th place at the Heritage and 5th place at the Masters. So he's rounding into form. I think it's fine if you want to go there. Keegan Bradley, I made the case that I like him quite a bit. He's a guy that's been striking the ball very well, and it's just a matter of the putter shows up. And on these bent grass greens in the Northeast, more times than not, his putter does show up. So I'm willing to bank on that there. Want to keep an eye on his ownership because I know a lot of people have already bet him. If he is getting a little bit too popular, might make a case to go elsewhere there. Then I'm definitely going to play Wyndham Clark. I made the case for why I made the outright with him. I don't think he's going to be too popular. So like his price at 7,900, Andrew Novak has just been playing way too good of golf to skip over him at 7,800. He's a guy that can get out of trouble if he does find some of these bunkers. Now you worry that maybe he finds too many of them and then that gets him out of contention, but he's been playing really good golf and I'm fine going back there. I could see making a case for Justin Rose, but I think I'm going to go to Siwoo Kim over him. He just looks like he's trending in the right direction. I do like where his game is at. Guy that's always been good with par 4 scoring. Excuse me. Throat got a little scratchy there. But yeah, Siwoo's been playing good golf, so I don't see him getting too popular. 15th last time out at the CJ Cup, 8th at the Heritage after missing a bunch of cuts. So looks like he's trending in the right direction. If he's not going to be high owned, I think he's definitely worth a look here. JJ Spawn not playing even remotely close to as well as he did earlier in the year, but his skill set I definitely think could translate here. The guy that's great on the par fours. He's a guy that hits accurate drives. He's good with his irons and approach shots. He's pretty good putting from 10 to 15 feet. He's in the top 10 in this field putting. So I like him quite a bit at 7,500. Keith Mitchell is a guy that I have a little bit of interest in, but I don't know that I'm going to get there. I do like Ben Griffin quite a bit. Just another guy accurate off the tee. If he does get in the sand, he's going to be fine scrambling out of there. Strikes the ball very well. So I'm going to go to Ben Griffin. Same with Akshay. I think that this is a sneaky good course for him. Just he's been putting well this year. I do think that you can make a case to go to Akshay here, and it's a very good price at only 7,100. Now, last couple times out hasn't really been incredible. No high end finishes compared to what we were seeing a little while ago, but he's good on the par four scoring. He's obviously good with his irons. He's fourth in opportunities gained over the last 24 rounds. So I think Akshay has a well-rounded game that could definitely suit here. Harris English, another guy I'm willing to go to down in the 6K range. Jaeger at 6,800 playing good golf. Good with the irons. He's pretty good with his 125 to 150 yard range. Pretty good putter, so I'm fine there. Eric Cole, he's been playing pretty good golf here. Fifth last time out, 18th. He had a 15th back in Houston and a 12th at the Valspar. Good finishes for him. Looks like he's trending in the right direction. So I'm willing to go to Cole. Tom Hoagie, another guy I think this course makes a ton of sense for. He is eighth on approach, eighth in par four scoring. Obviously, he can do some damage on approach here, and same with Lucas Glover. I think it makes sense to go with these guys that are going to consistently be in the fairway and consistently hitting greens. Now, as I said, maybe Bombers have a little bit of an advantage here, but I don't think that it's going to be tremendous just with how short that this course is. So that's pretty much what I'm looking at here. If I really want to dive down deep, I'm considering Cam Young maybe. Just he's a Northeast guy and he hasn't been absolutely horrendous lately compared to what he was early in the year. I mean, it still hasn't been great. 54th and miscut the last time out, but he did have an 18th at the Valero, so at least he showed some signs of life there, and maybe getting in the Northeast, he can have a little bit of familiarity and maybe get back to where he needs to be. But that's basically what I'm looking at this week. And it's going to be an interesting week from a DraftKings standpoint because I think you're going to have differing opinions on where to go and who to go with. I do think there'll be some overlap on certain guys that are going to get talked up and probably get some ownership. But I think in a no cut event, in only a 72 man field, a lot of guys aren't going to get as high of ownership as they probably should or would in a normal week. So don't be afraid to get different this week because nobody knows what they're doing this week. We've never seen this place before. So I really think that if you have conviction on a guy, go ahead and play him this week. But that's going to do it for this week. We are going to be back next week, obviously, for the second major of the year. Very excited for that. Obviously, going to have a good guest on for that show to break everything down. But check out thehelmsports.com, the My Bets tab. We'll have everything up there Wednesday. I already have my preview. So if you want to read about the course, I broke it down in depth over there. TheMadLabMMA.com. Second I make a bet goes right into the Discord. So every time I make a bet, you can get the same number I do. But that's going to do it for me for this week. As always, greatly appreciated. Thanks for listening. I'm your host, Derek Helm. And remember,
Just have fun out there.